Chris, thank you so much for chatting today. Why don't you start by telling us a bit about yourself?
Sure. My background is in engineering. So I spent the last about 10 years of my career at LinkedIn, starting off as an engineering manager. And by the time I left, I was the vice president of engineering there, responsible for most of the consumer application like LinkedIn.com mobile apps. About 6 or 7 months ago, I left to found a new company with a colleague that I worked with at LinkedIn. So we're building a new way for people to share and listen to bite-sized audio. So we're building a new consumer platform together. It's called Jam. If you want to check it out, jam.ai is the website.
Awesome. And I understand you're also a parent.
Yes. I am a parent of three. So I have three children, two boys that are 8 and 11, and a little girl that's 4. And my wife is a physician. So she's a really impressive and amazing woman who she's an OB-gyn and a robotic surgeon. So she has a pretty awesome practice here in the Bay Area.
That's awesome. So I imagine that there's quite a bit of juggling that goes on in your family. Do you and your wife have a way of dividing responsibilities that works for the two of you?
It's something that we are always working on and trying to improve on. I think it works, but every time we feel like we've got things kind of handled, life throws us, more curveballs or, more challenges. So years ago, we used to have what we called our 18-month crazy cycle, where we'd have we had our first kid. About 18 months later, everything kind of felt good. And then something new would happen, like I'd start a new job. After we had our second kid, we got dogs. So in addition to the 3 kids, I also have 2 German Shepherds. And so what we've had to do is really learn to, recognize that there are things that are important to us. So for example, it's very important to us to have dinner together every night. And we've learned to lean into the things that each of us are passionate about or at least skilled at, right? So my wife really enjoys cooking, fortunately for me. And so she tends to do most of the meal prep on the weekdays anyway. And, there are things that, perhaps I enjoy a little bit more. And then, there where we can, we will pay for people to help us, right? So we don't clean our own house, for example, but well, that's not true. I feel like all I do is clean my house, honestly. But what I mean is, we have a housekeeper that take care of some of the tasks for us. And so, but we talk about it a lot, and then try to be explicit with each other about what each of us are going to do in any given day. Probably the most challenging thing, and I'm sorry, I feel like I'm rambling a little bit, is the school drop off. So our and it's literally a day-to-day thing where we are figuring out which of our schedules will better accommodate on a given day who's going to take the kids to school or who's going to pick them up. But it just requires a lot of active communication about it, and I think intentional effort to help each other.
So what's your best advice for families with 2 working parents?
I used the word a couple of times a minute ago here. It's something I've thought a lot about and learned both professionally and personally in the last few years is to be intentional, right? I think it's very easy for life to, when you've got children and full-time jobs, it's very easy to kind of get caught up in the demands of the day, right? And recognizing that it's important to set aside time. I mean, in a family of 3 children, you've got many different relationships, right, between all the different folks. And so, be intentional about setting aside time for, the different permutations of relationships for each other, for creating time and space for each of us to find ways to relax or unwind or create, or exercise. And so I think you just have to actively work at it. My best advice is, don't let life and all of the demands sort of force you to kind of go from thing to thing, but try to flip it around a bit and be intentional with your partner about how you can sort of best use the time that you have together and with the family to, get everything that needs to get done.
That's wonderful. So you have a fabulous working wife, and you've also managed a lot of working moms. So what's your general perception of working moms?
Oh man, the first word that comes to mind for me is superhero. I think it's just, you know, um, you know, being, I mean, I've seen, seen the sort of countless studies and writings about how much more of the load the mom tends to take in the household, and even in a household like mine, where I make every effort to be, present and take accountability and responsibility for my family and help my wife. I still think objectively, it's even in our household, my wife does more than I do. She gets up and gets the kids ready for school in the morning. And I think in a bigger way than I do. And so the amount of things that working mothers get done in a given day between their family and their jobs is just, I just think it's superhuman. And so, I'm that's my general perception, is that they're, amazing and also incredible role models.
Do you have any advice for dads?
Yes, I do. One of the things that I learned at LinkedIn was that the things that I was doing were often setting examples and role modeling for parents. And I didn't know it at first. And so one story I can quickly tell is I met this woman on my team who was an incredible leader. She was responsible for much of the feed on LinkedIn. She had a pretty big role at the job prior to LinkedIn, and I think she'd been on my team for about a year and a half or so. And when I met her, in a one-on-one, she's like, "Hey, Chris, you did something in my first week at LinkedIn." So again, this was like a year and a half prior to this meeting with her. She's like, where you had sort of said in Slack that you were taking the day off last minute because your son was sick, and that you weren't going to be on Slack and you weren't going to be checking emails. And she's like, that really helped me feel safe to be, to create the space that I need to, for my kids. And it made me realize that LinkedIn was a special place that lived its values. And, I had no idea that in that moment I was role modeling. And I would say, the same thing, like my very explicit advice to dads out there is recognize that the choices that you make as a parent and the way that you share those choices and model those choices in the workplace is going to the parents that you're working with, moms and dads alike, are going to learn from what you're doing. And if you are setting an example where you create the space and take the time off. Earlier I said we always have dinner together, and if my team saw that I was chatting with them while I was in the middle of dinner, like that would be a bad example. That would be a bad role modeling. Or if my team said, "Hey, look, I'm going to be gone for the next 2 hours because this is my family time and I'll be back online later at the time that works for me," there's some bad role modeling in here, coming back online late at night too. But that's a different thing. But just the point is to recognize that what you're doing is setting an example, and try to set a positive example. Try to create an example where people feel safe to talk openly about the demands at home, and also to create the space that they need for their families.
I love that. That's great. When you think back on the moms you've managed who are among your most valuable employees, what did they do differently?
You have to, I was very fortunate that, LinkedIn is an environment where I learned, how to, I learned a lot about diversity and inclusion and belonging, and sort of how to think about those things. And so part of that is not just how to think about it, but how to talk about them, how to recognize it, how to continually work at it and be better and prioritize creating a safe space. And so if you're in an environment where and LinkedIn is an environment, so I recognize this sort of reflection may be different in a more toxic work environment, but the moms that were transparent about what they had going on, right, that were able to talk about their kids and felt safe talking to me about their kids, talking to me about whether it's the school drop-off schedule or what's going on with camp, or their child is sick or their child has a special need or things like that. I think the more that I could understand about the moms as a person, right, and it might not just be their kids, right, there may be other things that they're passionate about, other things they do. Like I know one of my wife's good friends, is also a physician and has 3 kids, and she runs marathons, right? And so it's like, for example, I managed her. I don't, she's a physician, but if I did, I would want to know that running marathons is important to her as well, because that requires quite a time. And so I think to your question, the moms that, were more transparent and open about what they cared about, what was important to them, that made it easier for me to manage them and to kind of also, maybe it plays into what I would role model. It plays into making sure that their colleagues, also could learn about what was important to them, and basically just help create a space and a team where we can be supportive of them as their whole selves, right? And one thing that I truly believe, especially for parents, is your most important job is being a parent, right? If you can't feel like you're being successful at that, then I can't expect you to be successful at work, right? So anytime, a mom or a dad or, like was struggling with their home life and were open with me about it, the first thing I would say is what I just said a minute ago, is like, look, that is the most important thing. Like what can I do to help support you in that, so that then you can, that build on that in your work as well.
Well, this was so much fun. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and insight with all of us.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it.